Hi, we'd like to welcome you to another in a series of webinars designed for railroads and railway agencies. I'm Terry Bills. I'm the Transportation Industry Director here at Esri, and today I'm joined by Agata Mizjik and Jim Berry, both solution engineers on our transportation and commercial teams. So today's webinar is really focused on mobile enablement for rail. That is, how can we really sort of capture all of the work that's actually being done out in the field? How can we have all of that productivity seamlessly integrated back into the office in a way that we're taking full advantage? So let me start very briefly by pointing out kind of a very, what all of you know, which is that railroads and railway agencies are really all based on geography and location, and whether that's all of your divisions, sales and marketing, your real estate, your engineering, environmental, all the way, including safety and security. But just as importantly, every one of those divisions really has workers in the field and needs to either do inspections or capture information in the field. And so that for many railroads, they actually have a much larger number of people working in the field than they actually do in some of their main offices. And so again, how do we capture all of that information, and how do we give all of those workers the tools that they need? And even more importantly, that sometimes the information from one area needs to be shared with others. And ultimately, again, that's really the advantage of GIS, is the ability to bring information from one area, bring it in, and share that seamlessly across the organization. And so again, how do we enable all of those field crews? And so one of the key areas that I'd like to start is really to speak a little bit about the way that you organize your data. And as you'll see, that's critically important, because it's really, in many cases, it's really through these enterprise portals that you access the data and the maps and the apps that you need actually out in the field. So here's an example from OBB, which is the Austrian National Rail Agency. And literally, this is their portal where everyone comes. They can, if it's on the infrastructure side, they can access all of the asset data. They can look at the real-time operations. A wide range of information is organized in a way that makes it easily accessible to anyone with access and authorization. Here's a number of other examples, and again, Crossrail, the new rail line being built through London, the New York MTA, and the way that they've organized a whole range of both data and applications, as well as the California high-speed rail. These are just a few examples of really, again, the way that you want to organize the information so that you make it easily accessible for any worker, no matter where they are, whether they're in the office, whether they're in the field. All of this information is easily available to them. Here's again another example, this from Ontario and the new Ontario line, which is being built. And so as you can see, not only do they have such things as being able to access all of the property and the parcel information and the condemnations, but even in fact can really pull up any of the 3D models on their on any device, on their iPad when they're in the field, to be able to look at the design, look at any pull up any of the information that they need anywhere that they are. So now let's shift and really look at some of the key challenge areas, if you will, that I think most railroads and rail agencies face. And ultimately it is, how do we connect your field crews really to your corporate systems in as seamless of a way as possible, so that that information is automatically brought back in. The latest information is back in your corporate databases and not on that piece of paper in the worker's truck on the lower left-hand side. And that is that we want to be able to not only have targeted applications that you're going to see today, but that we have the ability to take the information out into the field in different formats. So you can see that you can actually take, if you'd like, a track chart, a GIS-based dynamic track chart, and you can actually take that into the field while you're doing inspections, or so that you can take the data in any way, in any shape with you, so that how can you, again, be more productive, and how do we bring that information in? So we at Esri think of your field operations really as a workflow, if you will, so that we really start with the planning. That is, that how do we use the GIS and how do we use location really to assign and to coordinate field activities. As you'll see, we have solutions that help you navigate, and in many cases these are off-road. These are your own private roads. You need, it's not, you're not going to be able to navigate to the work location in necessarily a straightforward manner, so that you have the ability to navigate there using your own networks. And that once you're there, then you can actually capture, and you'll see that we have a number of ways that you can actually capture the information, and very easy and very ways in which you don't have to be really a GIS expert at all, that very simple to capture the information. And then how do we really understand where our work crews are, and how do we monitor them, and how do we bring that information then back into our corporate systems? And we think of that really as an entire really sort of workflow or life cycle of the collection of field data. And so we do have a range of integrated mobile apps for the field, and everything from tracker, workforce, collector, navigator, survey 123, and quick capture. You're going to see a number of these illustrated today on very specific applications, and so that you can actually see the way that they can be configured and the way that they can be used by your workers in the field. So a couple of quick examples, and these are taken from the highway side, but very much the same results can be applied on the rail side. This is an application in the field, which is collecting real-time incident information, and literally in real time that's actually being updated on this dashboard, so that the Department of Transportation, the Traffic Operations Center, Traffic Control Center, is actually being able to access that information, which is captured in the field, in real time. And we do have a number of rail examples very similarly. Another example, and that you will see an example of this particular application, we call it quick capture. It's really designed, originally it was developed for workers in a truck driving down the highway at highway speeds, being able to collect information safely and accurately using their iPad or their iPhone as they drove down the roadway at highway speeds. And so again, that information brought back into an executive dashboard, and so that seamlessly brought back into your corporate systems. Again, I mentioned the ability to take the information out in different formats, whether it's a track chart, whether it's a straight line diagram, or whether it's a real geographic view. All of that you can take out and on your mobile device in a way that you can validate, do the inspection, and update the information. And as a matter of fact, you can actually integrate this dynamic track chart literally with your asset. So with your asset management and your inspection routines, so that track defect, you actually can see, can integrate the various defects together with your track chart information. And we mentioned the ability of the straight line diagrams in this particular case, also integrated with your linear referencing systems as well. So another key challenge: how do we capture all that productivity when in fact we're in a disconnected or out of range mode? And that's here the great example that we have from CSX after one of the hurricanes. The crew very quickly spun up, literally in an afternoon, configured a couple of mobile applications. They took several drones and the collector on iPads into the field, and literally were able to do the inspections in real time. And that information then was seamlessly fed back into the CSX control center. So literally the senior executives could sit in real time and see the condition of the entire track network. And you can read the quote from the VP of Engineering that in fact it was done very safely, and in fact again gave them that real-time view of everything going on in the field. Next, often in rail, we have the need for high accuracy in the field. And in fact, we at Esri work with any number of providers, whether it's Bad Elf, whether it's EOS, whether it's Trimble and others, that can bring much higher accuracy, levels of accuracy to your mobile device in the field. So whether it's your iPhone, your iPad, or other device, that in fact you can bring that down to sub-meter level accuracy, and in fact down into the centimeters level of accuracy, and even better depending upon your accuracy requirements. So again, the ability really to collect very high accuracy information on very standard commercial devices in the field. And then ultimately, what certainly we at Esri take a strong position that you really should look at configuration rather than customization as much as possible. And so you're going to see a wide range of applications that mobile solutions that we have that are very, very simple to configure, and that literally you can be up and running with an application in a matter of a couple of hours in terms of configuration. So we certainly strongly recommend configuration as much as possible. And with that, I'm actually going to transfer it over to Jim, and I'm going to, Jim will actually demonstrate that capability. So Jim, you're Jim on your Mac? Is that correct?
Yes, on my Mac, please, thanks.
Okay. And there you go.
Okay. All right, great. Again, my name is Jim Barry. I've been with Esri since '94, so I've been around a long time. I'm currently a solution engineer on the transportation team. I focus on rail, transportation, commuter, and freight rail. So we work on a variety with a variety of parts of the ArcGIS platform in order to make operations better and in ease with a lot of digital transformation goals that you have. And one of the basic things is moving off of paper forms. And we're not just moving just to move, just to use technology where we didn't have it before, but there are many benefits to doing that. And ArcGIS gives you a lot of tools for doing so. For example, here's an example of a stock strike report, or a report that's filled out when the train happens to hit some livestock. And looking at this form, it looks like, I don't know when this form was created, but it looks like it was made before the war, maybe the first war. And you know, I think paper gives you that tangibleness. Okay, I have a paper, I fill it out, I turn it in. But there are things that can be done with their technology that can make this a lot smoother, make the entries a lot less. In fact, some of these items can be pulled right off of the device. You know, the train number, the engineer name, the date of the accident, the location, and then aspects of that location, whether it be curvature or grade or train director or types of aspects that are properties of the location that you're at in order to make that better. So let me show you an example of that. There is a product that we have called ArcGIS Survey 123. Some of you may be familiar with this, but this is a mobile ready application that allows you to go to the field and collect information intelligently, not just spatially, but a rules-based collection of attribute data that can be linked to it as well, so that you can store that over time. So what I did is I took that stock strike report on paper and just one by one went through this designer and just started bringing over elements of the page. And those things that are captured by the device, like I'm going to go to the field with a smartphone or with a tablet, these things have GPS on board where I can get a location. If I need extremely accurate GPS, as Terry said, we support the GNSS, high accuracy GPS. I have a map where I can place where this happened, distance it was first seen, train number, engineer number, and then different aspects of the form, including the engineer signing the form, can be captured and then zapped directly back to the single database. So here is a Apple iPad that I'm bringing to the field. And when I open up this report, when I'm in the field, I can start collecting. I hit one livestock, and it allows me to set the location of where that was. Let me see. If I happen to be on the train, the GPS would have picked that up right away, but I can say that I was there. Photo of livestock. Well, here's my fella. I hit him. He's not very damaged. So take a picture of him, and then I've got a first responder on the scene in order to render some first aid in order to take care of that stock strike. So go ahead and capture that as well. My train number I know is 123. The road number of my loco, I put that in there as well. The speed at which I first saw it, was there an injury? Was I on lookout? Could I have done it sooner? And then finally, I can sign this and by the engineer and the other staff that the form says that I can, and then I go ahead and submit that. And that submits back to the single database where I have the stock strike layer in my map. And if I click on that map and scroll down, I can see all of the information that was captured, plus the photos that were captured as well. There's my first responder rendering first aid there on the stock strike. And then I store that, and I can store that over time, and I can symbolize this different ways depending on the attributes that I captured, or Do I sense patterns by location or by type of train or by speed of train or by grade of train? And I can collectively pull that information in. I can set up reports. In this case, I've got all my stock strikes in North Dakota and symbolize that as a heat map. So it jumps right into my eyes right away where problems might be, where problem areas might be that I may want to look into further. For example, this area down here seems to have a disproportionate number of strikes. I can go out there, do some inspections, and try to figure out why. Maybe some fences are down, who knows? But at this point, I'm not just collecting the data in the field in a smart way, but I'm also then analyzing it, detecting patterns in order to find problems and complete that feedback loop. So that's just one example of a very simple paper form that has been digitally transformed so that I can capture it more quickly and use it more effectively. So I'm going to turn it over to Agata now, and she has another example of a great example of field mobility with rail, and she'll pick it up from here, and I'll be back.
Thanks, Jim. So like Terry mentioned, my name is Agata Mishchik. I'm also a solution engineer as part of our commercial group. I work with our customers in the rail industry, as well as in trucking and logistics. So like Jim mentioned, another easy to configure application that you can use to collect data out in the field is Quick Capture. While Survey 123 is geared more towards form-based workflows, like the form that Jim just transferred over into a digital form, Quick Capture is really a big button mobile application. So it allows the user to simply tap a button to capture a feature, making it really simple. And as a result, this app is really well suited to at-speed data collection or rapid data collection workflows where the user doesn't have a whole lot of time to spend looking at the app, but still wants to gather that information while they're out in the field. So just a couple of examples from other industries. We've seen a lot of utility companies as well as gas companies using Quick Capture to do aerial surveys and inspections of transmission lines or pipelines, other linear features. And these forms can get as complicated as these two on the right-hand side here, where there's lots of different assets, lots of different pieces that are being inspected, and lots of different issues that are being logged just through the touch of a button. And then one more quick example of at-speed data collection. We've got a couple of DOTs using this application when they've got two people in the vehicle, one's driving, one can be collecting information, or they can actually just start logging and start recording linear features, for example, where they've plowed a road before and then hit the button when they stop the vehicle and stop their route. So lots of different interesting ways that this application can be used. So really quickly, I'm going to show how we can configure one of these Quick Capture projects and then show how we can collect data out in the field. So I'm in Quick Capture right now. I can see my existing projects here, and we'll look at this one in just a second. But if I wanted to start a new project, I just click New Project here, and I can start from existing layers or from a template. So there's lots of different templates that are in here that are ready to use for different industries, all sorts of ones that are kind of interesting to look through. But I can also just start a project from an existing feature layer. And I can see all of the feature layers that that I own, as well as ones that are shared with me through my organization. I'm going to look for this track observations one and select it and click next. I'm going to call this emergency response and create this survey. And you'll see that I already have some, based on the data that's in that feature layer, it already has started a form for me. I can start laying this out how I want to. I can change, the number of columns depending on how I want this to look. I can preview this on different devices, so small smartphones all the way up to how this might look for somebody who is using a large tablet out in the field. And I can start moving these buttons around and configuring this form, as well as configuring how the data on the back end gets collected. So the back end of this is a feature layer, and I'm collecting different types or different attributes in that feature layer. So while I can change the appearance of what these buttons look like, I can also change what data is being collected and stored in that feature layer every time I press this button. So in this case, I'm collecting data to this track observations feature layer. When I click this washout, the ballast is washed out observation, it's going to log that as a type, which is a field in my feature layer, and it'll start logging that linear feature with those types. I can start adding in all sorts of other data in here and other attributes, so I can collect multiple attributes at a time while I'm doing this. I'm going to switch to this form that's already been configured and ready. And there's some other information in here as well. So you can start collecting multiple data sets and start saving data to multiple feature layers at a time. And they can be linear, polygon, and points. So up at the top here, I've got some point features that I'm collecting after some sort of storm perhaps impacted my network, and I just need to set up an application really quickly and have people go out into the field, whether it's on foot or on high rail vehicles, and start collecting and start kind of triaging what issues might be affecting the network, if there's some trees that are covering the track, if there's some flooding on the track, things like that, so we can start doing some post-storm cleanup. So I'm collecting point features up here at the top, as well as linear features down at the bottom. Again, I can configure appearance of these, as well as configure some other additional settings, like requiring to take a photo, for example, that I want to know, what that flooded crossing looks like. And then the other thing that I can look at in the general settings as well, we won't get into all of this, but I can set some accuracy recommendations and limits, as well as some recommended things and different ways that the data is collected. And Quick Capture does work with some of those GNSS receivers that Terry mentioned at the beginning if you want higher accuracy. And so just going to try and switch over. And play a video of what this looks like on a mobile device. So as an end user of that application, I can log into Quick Capture. Once I log in, I can see which surveys are available to me. I can also search for additional surveys and Quick Capture projects by browsing existing projects that have been shared with me, or by scanning a QR code that someone might have sent me. So I'm going to open up this emergency response survey. This is what it looks like on a mobile device, and I can start collecting information. So if I collect a crossing, flooded crossing, for example, it's going to open up the camera right away for me, since that's required to take a photo. I can take a photo of my office here, and that's going to log a point location, since those were point observations, with that photo attached to it and all of the data as well. For linear features down at the bottom here, I can start collecting, damaged rail and washed out ballast. So these are going to start basically a linear feature, and I can collect multiple linear features at a time, as well as collect points on top of those linear features. So again, this was just I just walked from one end of my office to the other, so it created a line, and I'm indoors right now, so my accuracy is pretty low. But you can see that you can start turning on and off these features as you're driving, as you're walking, as you're in a vehicle, and it'll start collecting. I can send the records manually, or I can also just wait, and it'll automatically send those records after a certain point, once they've kind of been archived on the device. So that's another really quick example of easily configuring a form type of application, a little bit less detailed than the Survey 123 form, but really, again, meant for that rapid data collection as you're out in the field and moving. You don't have a lot of time to fill out a form, but you just need to collect some kind of preliminary information. So back to this, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and show one more demo before I turn it back over to Jim. And the next thing I'm going to show is field maps. And Field Maps is our newest application that's come out. It's really just a combination of the ability to collect data, the ability to view authoritative data sets and maps on your mobile device, as well as do some markups, and then optimize tracking. So it's rolling in our Collector, Explorer, and Tracker applications, if you're familiar with those, and rolling them into one single application. And we got a lot of feedback from users that this is a workflow that they wanted. They wanted, one application. They didn't want all of their field users to be installing multiple things at the same time. So this is kind of a simple version of that. And there's a web component now. So before, again, if you're familiar with Collector, you may be familiar with the way that you set up maps for collection. Now there's a web interface that lets you kind of configure and set up these applications, create new forms. There's some smart form capability in here as well, and just less space and less hassle for the field workers. So I'm going to show that really quickly here as well. I'm in Field Maps right now, and I can see all of the maps that I own that are kind of ready to collect data. There's some editable layers in there. I can hide certain maps from the end user experience. So these are all of my hidden maps. And if I don't want one of these to show up, I can just check it here and say, hide in the Field Maps mobile experience. I can search for maps in here as well if I've got a lot of them. But we're going to look at this customer site information map, and I'm going to open it up briefly in our map viewer. So this is set up to be, used by somebody who is maybe in marketing or sales, and they're going out to do a customer site visit. And maybe at that point, they also want to do kind of a site evaluation. They want to see where there's entrance access for trucks, where there's dock access, is there rail access, is the customer site rail served, what kind of buildings are on site at the customer, and do the typical things that you've been able to do in Collector, like add attachments and photos and things like that. So back in Field Maps, I'm going to open up this customer site information. And in here, I can change some information as well. I'm going to skip to this content tab where I see all of my editable layers that are in this map. So these are all of the layers that people will be able to collect on. I can see that there's some feature templates in here as well that have already been styled and programmed. And if I switch to the form tab up here, I can see a smart form for this particular feature to start adding. And I can start doing some things like changing, the order. I can start clicking into these fields that I'm collecting and add a description that adds some context to the user on what you want them to put in. So this is really nice. You don't have to do this in the data anymore. This is all done through this Field Maps web app. And I can save my changes and those will be reflected out in the field. And then one more thing that I want to show in here is there's some interesting use of arcade expressions in here when you're building these smart forms. So I can start doing conditional things like fields showing up when a certain field is marked a certain way. So in this case, when I'm looking at the track and trying to see if a facility is rail served, I can give it a condition, and I only want to have my issues show up when my condition is poor. So I can add in at the bottom here this conditional visibility, and it's an arcade expression that basically says, do not show this field unless the field track condition equals poor. And I'll show that in the mobile app in just a second. And then one last thing that I want to show as well is you can pre-program and pre-download map areas for your field workers to utilize. And then there's similar settings in here as in Quick Capture on accuracy, kind of confidence and accuracy requirements for collection. So really quickly here, if we look at the mobile application, again, as an end user, I can see which maps have been shared with me. For the tracking capabilities, if tracking is enabled at my organizational level, and if I have the ability to have tracking, I can actually turn on my tracks and start tracking my movements throughout the day. I can pick a duration or until it's switched off. And then I can also see if there's maps that have those offline map areas programmed, I can see those in here. So in this particular case, this Montana map, there are some pre-established offline areas. This is great if you know that there's areas of no connectivity. That just makes it faster for your mobile users. They don't have to download. However, it basically pre-packages it for them. However, you can have your users add an offline area as well, same as with Collector. That was a workflow that was already in Collector, where the end user can download a specific area if they know they're going into an area of no connectivity. And then if I open this customer site information map, I can see my location. I can start, turning on and off different layers. So I'm going to turn my tracks on. And I can see where I've been that day, and if I need to follow up on anything, I can see where I've been. I can see what sites I've visited. I can see where I've collected data. So this is the site that I just collected data at, and I can see all of the features that I collected, and I can click on them and see different attributes. If you enable GPS data collection on here, you'll actually be able to see certain things from your GPS device. If you've got a receiver, it'll import all of like the HDOP and PDOP and other accuracy values in there as well. And so I can start collecting information in here. I can start collecting, different. These are the different information about the GPS receiver. Like I mentioned, and since I was just using my iPhone, it doesn't have all that accuracy, but it does have some information about the location. And then if I add in a feature here, let's add in a linear feature. I can start adding points. I could also start streaming. So right now I'm just drawing a line, but I could also start streaming my location and walk along the line. And then here's where I wanted to show that conditional form that we just looked at. So if I click track condition and click good, it's not going to show that track issues form. However, if I go back in there and click on poor, the track issues form now appears. So that's the conditional formatting. And I'm going to end that here. That was just kind of a quick overview of field maps, and I'm actually going to pass it back to Jim to show workforce and how to plan and dispatch workers using the workforce application.
Great, thanks, Agata. And let's go to my Mac. Okay.
Should be going.
Great. All right. Yeah. So, it might seem obvious, but there might even be more advantages than you might have thought. It's not just about automatically entering in the database, giving everyone immediate visibility without having the extra step of data entry. No loss forms, readability. You can make some fields mandatory, gives you quality. You can reduce the number of fields because we can pull information off of the device and then analyze this stuff over space and time. Of course, attachments as well. So it provides a bunch of advantages. And I want to kind of pivot into workforce. As Agata had said, it's currently a separate focused application. It is being rolled into field maps as well, but the functionality and the use cases are pretty much the same. But really it comes down to, I manage a bunch of work tasks on a browser, and that information can be communicated back and forth on smartphones and tablets to people in the field. And then you can also build dashboards, read-only dashboards, in order to give the entire organization visibility to what's going on, executive dashboards and what have you. So let me go over here. Okay, so here is an application that is managing all of the work that needs to be done. In this case, high priority work are in these red diamonds. So I see one here that is a signal repair, and I can assign that to one of my workers in the field that has workforce right away. In fact, I don't even have to plan it out. Maybe this is something a little bit more urgent. I can create the assignment for today. But in order to do that maintenance, I need to flag out a section of track So I'm going to assign that to the same maintenance supervisor, make that critical, and I can put some times down there as well, make that track maintenance, and then create that assignment. Switches would need to be activated, but this also gives me visibility into other work that might need to be done that could benefit from that same section of track being shut down, even if it's lower priority work. Like, for example, here's an item here where there's some reported ballast issue that we need to get out there and inspect. So I can assign that as well to benefit from that same section of track being flagged out, assign that to the same person. And let me see if there's any other work. Yes, there's some trash here at this station that needs to be collected. I can create that assignment as well, make that a lower priority item, make that today, assign that to the same person. So I have seen that with railroads, that with departments within the railroad might not have as good visibility as to what other departments are doing. And to give them this kind of visibility allows more tasks to be done for each flag out, since flag outs are inherently dangerous. So if we can minimize those, the better. So let me go over to my Apple iPad now, and I've got, now I'm in the field and I've automatically had some work that has been assigned to me. So before I do the signal maintenance, let me show you one more thing here. Once I assigned that track flag out to occur in the future, I have a dashboard, a read-only dashboard that I can project on a screen or have it on an executive dashboard where, let me get rid of this for a second, where if, let's say I have, here's a section of track that is currently flagged out. Here's a section that is currently flagged out, and another section that's due to flag out at some point in the future. If I go here, this is the section of track that is due to be flagged out. Now, if I go to my tablet and I acknowledge that the track needs to be flagged out, and then I start that work, then I can go back and go to the signal maintenance and go ahead and start that work. And then I sent a crew up to where that ballast area was in order to do an inspection, and I can start that work as well. And if I go back to my list, those have all been started. If I go back to my office view of this, let me create that assignment. If I go back to my office view, I can see I've got a bunch of field supervisors in the field with various tasks at various stages of being done. And this work is underway. If I go to the dashboard, what I'll see, since these things are synced up, is the section of track that was due to be flagged out turned from green to red. So now it is flagged out. So now we have that visibility throughout the organization. Now, if I go back to my field worker who has completed that work and completed the signal repair, I can make some notes if I want as well. But I'm not going to take time doing that. And then the signal repair is done. My to-do list is empty. My completed work is listed there, which is fine. Let me get rid of that. Dash red, it automatically cleared up. That dash red went away, tells everyone in the organization that that track is no longer flagged out. And if I go to the maintenance view, the maintenance supervisor's view, I can see it's that way as well. So that's some of the advantages of assigning tasks, and also giving visibility to everyone in the organization as to what's going on, not only currently going on, but what's going on in the future, so that you can get different departments jump on to a single job. Now, here's another example where I have a survey that I want to create for doing some sign maintenance, for installing new signs, for repairing signs, for removing signs. And I just go ahead and build this report. It's a very simple report. the data of the report, the sign location, sign text, some additional information, and then I go ahead and deploy that form to the field. So let me go back to survey 123, and I've got this sign maintenance form, and I'm ready to start collecting. I'm going to place a new sign at a certain location, and I know I'm in California, but this sign is going to be placed out here in West Virginia. And if I zoom down, if I pan down here where I want the sign to be, okay, this is where I want the sign to be. And additional info, I'm going to say, put in 20 miles to Canova Station. And then go ahead and sign that. That's not my real signature. That is. Anyways, then go ahead and send that now. And that gets submitted. And if I go over to, let me see here. Let me jump to a different screen here. Okay, I am going to change over to a different machine and show my screen here. And what you're seeing here in ArcGIS Pro are some tools and techniques that I used in order to create schematic maps off of my geographic maps to keep those always in sync. If I make edits to the geographic, it updates the schematic. I can use this schematic map to feed into my track chart maintenance, or I can create interactive applications. So here I've got the geographic map, and if I refresh that map, I can see that the sign that I wanted placed in that location is, select that. All right, so my sign has been entered, because what happened behind the scenes is while the survey 123 gave it a lat long, then I bring that lat long back and I have an LRS built on this geographic data, and it finds where that measure is and it places that sign there. Then what I have is a Python script that if I add anything to my geographic map, web map, it syncs it over to my schematic map, or if I enter anything onto my schematic map, either with measures or with lat long, then this script periodically or overnight or once an hour or on demand syncs that information over. And let me move this and show you what happens then. If I go here, I have a schematic representation of the same map, and if it refreshes, then I have this sign that has been placed there as well. In fact, if I go over here and select it, that script has moved, oops, wrong layer. That sign has been entered there as well. So I'm using survey 123 to enter maintenance for a new sign, repair sign, or removed sign, submit that in as a lat long, and then behind the scenes, I'm using Esri Roads and Highways to build an LRS and to maintain a series of event layers, which not only enter that, that new item as an event, but using a Python script in order to, along with Roads and Highways web services, in order to sync that stuff over. So not only is it, keeping this geographic and schematic in sync for editing, but also for applying events, but then also tying it all the way to a front end from the field. As soon as that field worker enters that sign, within a few moments, it's entered onto the map using the LRS as an event and then synced over to the schematic. And that's pretty much all I have on that. I'm going to turn it back over to Terry.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Jim. So let me, and if you do have questions, you can type your questions into the question box and we'll get to question and answers in just a few minutes. So again, we've shown you a number of different examples of our mobile technology. Your own particular requirements will really determine which one of those, whether it's quick capture for certain types of data collection, whether it's form-based of survey 1, 2, 3, so your requirements are really going to drive those. But again, we do want to sort of think about this workflow that I think you've seen illustrated, that how do we plan it, how do we capture the information, how do we monitor, and how do we coordinate, and how do we make that really in a way that we're capturing the information in the field as effectively and efficiently as we can, and then having that come back into our corporate systems. And one of the things, obviously, that we spend a great deal of time, it's whatever asset management, whether it's SAP, whether it's Maximo, or whatever asset management system, as well as any of your other business systems. Literally, these mobile solutions can bring that data back in a way that you're actually then able to take advantage, update your corporate databases, and literally share that information across the organization. So that's really the goal, is not only how do we capture all of that productivity that's occurring in the field, but how do we bring it back and allow you to be more productive in terms of your own operations and your ability to utilize that information to make better decisions. So with that, as I said, we're going to close that off, and we'd like to open it up. So please type your questions into the question box, and we'll start there. So let's see, the first question is coming in, and I got it. So can you describe the components of field maps that are currently available, and how I can access field maps?
Sure. Yep. So the current release of field maps includes Explorer, which was used for, viewing authoritative data as well as doing markups, Collector for the data collection, and then Tracker if you've got that license and those capabilities enabled at your organizational level. With ArcGIS Online, if you're using ArcGIS Online, that field maps should be included, so you can just launch it from your app launcher in the top right corner of ArcGIS Online. If you're using Enterprise, there are setups available for it at Enterprise 10.8.1 that you can download from my Esri. And then beyond 10.8.1, field maps will just be included with the Enterprise product. So you won't have to download any special setups or anything. But right now, those are the two ways to access it. And then we're also working on integrating field maps with Workforce. That's phase 2. And then eventually phase 3 will be incorporating Navigator capabilities into there.
Okay, great, thanks. And Jim, this is for you. There was a question, I know you kind of went through it a little bit quickly, but the ability to integrate linear referencing from roads and highways with the schematic, and can you describe, the question was, is that using ArcGIS schematics, or what were you using there to make that happen?
Okay, yeah, the schematic, making schematic diagrams and schematic mapping a derivative product of the geographic data I was doing with ArcGIS Pro and the relatively new trace network tools. In the past, you would have had to do that with utility network, and trace network tools are a nice, simpler functional subset of those tools. And so I did it with that, and we've got a video out on our Esri Rail on YouTube. Maybe in a follow-up blog article, follow-up email, we can send a link to that YouTube area that Mark Pesovic maintains. There's a deep dive video on that. Now, when it comes to Esri roads and highways, I mean, once I have a geographic data and I built an LRS on it, and I use similar calibration points on the schematic drawing, using things like stations and switches and things that are physically in common between those two data sets, then I can build a similar LRS on that. So if I am placing point and line events on the geographic data, then I sync that over to the schematic data. If I want to work with the schematic data, as Agata said, bringing schematic maps to the field, if I want to interactively add things to the schematic map, then I can sync it over to the geographic map, not just for use in the field, but used back in the office, used displayed on walls, used in executive dashboards, used on printed maps and track charts. I use it everywhere. So we've got a video on that too that goes a little bit more deep dive. We didn't really, I know I kind of glazed on some of these things, but every single piece that I showed has a longer, more deep dive video on how to do that out on our YouTube site. So hopefully, and then from there, if you take a look at that and have any additional questions, well, Agata and I are here, Mark is here, Josh is here, and we're here to help you out and help you use some of these things that you think might be useful to you.
Okay, and Jim, there was a sort of a follow-on question that really having to do with roads and highways. You used roads and highways, that is an additional extension. Is there, I guess the question was, were those capabilities available off the shelf? And then does that require the roads and highways extension to complete the workflow that you just described?
Yes, to build an LRS and to build these event layers, these point layers, line event layers, both in the geographic data and as I did it synced to a schematic version of it, yes, requires Esri roads and highways. I don't have specific sales information about that. I believe it's an additional cost for that extension. Perhaps Josh or Mark can jump in on that to give more details, or if you want to contact us directly offline one-on-one, we can give you more information on that for use with ArcGIS Enterprise. No, it is not something that just comes out of the box with ArcGIS Pro. It's an additional extension because not everybody needs it. But for specific sales information, we would have to follow up with you directly because some organizations might already have it. So, it really comes down to us having a one-on-one conversation to figure that out for you.
Okay. And Agata, this is a question for you. The question was, could you describe it a little bit more detail, the way that the mobile technology works offline and the synchronization process?
Yeah, so I didn't get into all of the settings, but there's a couple of different ways. Most of our applications work offline. They allow the user to pre-download an area, or they allow a GIS analyst to set up an area that is already pre-packaged for the user to download. That includes all of the feature layers that are included in there, as well as the base map, and you choose the level of tiling that you want and the level of detail. So that's all local on the device. The user can collect the information, and then there's also different options on once they reach a level or an area with connectivity, is there an automatic sync that automatically sends all of those features that were collected offline? Is it a manual sync that the user needs to actually push those features? So those are settings that an admin or a back office worker can set. But yeah, the general workflow is you download an area, you do your work, and then when you reach connectivity, all of those edits get synced back up.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, well, I think we've run out of time. We want to thank all of you for attending today. We hope that you found it useful. There is a little survey right after, if you please take that, and that will help us in terms of future webinars, and we look forward to having you join us for future webinars designed for railroads and railway agencies. So again, thanks for attending. And with that, we'll close.